and the basis on which we stand today is that the only way out of this impasse is through the unity of the working class, through mass action, through the traditional mass methods of struggle, as opposed to the individual terrorism of the provisional IRA, and on the basis of socialist policies. Now, it sometimes will then be counterposed or argued against us that that's a good idea, that we'd all like to see the workers in the North coming together, but that it's not really possible. But against that we say, all you have to do is look at the movement that's developing of workers in struggle in the North, exactly the same as the movement that's developing in Britain, and there you see how the unity of the working class can be built. You have 250,000 people who are members of trade unions in the North, as against, for example, at their high point, 100,000 people who were members, or who were claimed to be members, of the Orange Order. You have the fact that in the last decade and a half of troubles, not one strike of working people involving Catholic and Protestant workers, not one strike has been broken by sectarianism. The problem in Northern Ireland society is not that the politicians are divided. The problem is the nature of the politicians. The problem is the fact that working class communities are polarised as never before. And power sharing, this convoluted arrangement that they're putting forward, is not a prescription to bring working class communities together. It's an arrangement by which sectarian politicians can oversee the division that exists within society. And more than ever, it's actually an arrangement that the DUP will quite happily say to Sinn Féin, you look after the Catholics, and Sinn Féin in reverse will say to the DUP, you look after the Protestants, and what you have in effect is just another step in the political balkanisation of Northern Ireland. And it can last for a period, yes, because this time, unlike the last agreement, they're all inside the tent pissing out, whereas the last time you had the DUP trying to pull it down from the outside. But it won't last for any particular length of time, because into this is an inbuilt paralysis which can bring the whole thing crashing down. You have a system of cross-community voting, and on decisive issues, now on a change from the procedure that existed in the past Assembly, members from one side or the other on the executive can demand on issues a cross-community vote. And that means you have to have a majority of the unionists in the Assembly or on the executive of the ministers, and a majority of nationalists have to vote for something before it can go through and become policy. So what that in effect means, actually, when you've had Sinn Féin complaining about the loyalist or unionist veto over the whole course of the Troubles, they've actually negotiated a unionist veto now on every aspect of policy. Yes, of course, there's also a nationalist veto, but since the nationalists are in the main the people who are fighting for change, and the unionists in the main are the people who are defending the status quo, in order to change anything you have to have an agreement of both sides, and they've given a veto that a majority of the unionists can veto any change going through this Assembly. If there's a disagreement and they can't arrive at a policy on something, the only answer is collapse. And it's not hard to see on policing, on the policing of a parade, on any of the contentious issues that arise day and daily in the North, how disagreements of that nature will come about, and this will come crashing down. Then they've removed, if they do remove the power of the British government to suspend the Assembly, which was a safety valve in the past, the only solution is an election. But an election called after an Assembly crashed on a sectarian issue would produce a worse, more polarised result, and that's why this situation will not work. But if the Assembly is up and running, and if this social and economic agenda is implemented by a coalition of the DUP and Sinn Féin, then it is easy to see how an opposition can develop in the communities. For example, on the issue of water charges, if a mass non-payment is built against such an Assembly, how the support could develop for the idea of a new party of the working class. And at the appropriate moment, we would put forward the idea not just of raising it as a slogan, but of some concrete initiative to begin to bring such a party into being. It's not at the present, but it's something we have to keep on the agenda for the future, because the only way out in Northern Ireland is the building of the united force of the working class, and the only way that can be done
is around socialist policies.